Why wear a mask if you're vaccinated, and vice versa? Why bother to vaccinate if you're always going to be wearing a mask? A thing that frustrates me on the internet is when you find an article or a video that seems to have the answer you're looking for, but the author refuses to give it to you for 5 minutes or 8 pages or some other tedious delay. I hope you'll stick around for the rest of this video, but I'll give you the short answer quickly. Masks are a barrier outside your body that keep virus particles from getting in. Not 100% usually, but whatever percentage the mask is rated for, as long as you wear it securely. Vaccines train your immune system to deal with the pathogens once they've entered your body, ideally killing the virus particles before they can replicate very much and make you contagious or feel very sick. The fewer particles of the virus that your immune system has to deal with, the better it can. So the answer is because they both protect you together more effectively than either one could alone. Again, I hope you'll stay with me because I want to explain more parts of what's happening with COVID in late 2024. But if you leave now, please know at the very least, there is so much COVID circulating in the United States at this time that the CDC is starting to make recommendations for precautions again and offering mitigations for free again. The CDC really doesn't want to admit that the pandemic is ongoing. So if they are offering these things for free again, you should be able to deduce that things now must be worse than they were when the free things were canceled before, right? So yes, please mask and vax. Thank you for still being here. I'm going to try to explain to you in non-researcher language what infections are and how both vaccines and masks protect you together. A question I've considered in several forms over the last few years is, what makes an infection an infection? How is an infection different from exposure, a virus incubating in a person, or serious illness? Is there any difference? At what point are you contagious? Not the number of days, but at what stage in the infection? At what point does a vaccination's protection kick in? Is it happening right in your nose? No. Or is it? When someone who is not a medical professional thinks of getting infected with a disease, what usually comes to mind is that person exhibiting signs and symptoms of that illness. After researching across several different medical sources, I can tell you that there are 5 recognized medical stages of infection. It's incubation, prodromal, illness, decline, and convalescence. Those all refer to what happens inside your body after a pathogen, like a virus, enters it. Before an infection can happen, there has to be an exposure to those pathogens, whether they are viruses or bacteria or fungi. Let's say someone in a waiting room has a symptomatic COVID infection and they cough unmasked for a few bouts of 5 or 6 seconds each. By doing that, they've produced a cloud of COVID in that waiting room, mostly around them, but potentially spreading to all corners of the room depending on ventilation, airflow, and filtration. If you're not in that waiting room, you have not been exposed to that COVID. The stages of infection have not started for you. But if you are in that waiting room, you have just been exposed. Are you infected? If you're wearing an N95 or better quality mask, it is possible that those virus particles do not enter your body. But there is a chance that some will. Even if it's well secured, masks only work as well as they are rated. For example, 94%, 95%, 99%. Nothing is 100% effective. And if you're in that waiting room and you're not wearing a mask that securely covers your nose and mouth, well then according to an infectious disease specialist, you have just been infected by that COVID. Or at least the odds are extremely high. You might not get seriously ill, but if there's no barrier keeping the pathogens out of your body, then they are going to go into your body when you breathe that air. Let's examine the stages of infection more closely. The first stage is the incubation stage. Most of us think of incubation in human size or farm animal size terms. An egg is warmed until it's ready to hatch. With diseases, incubation just means the stage of infection between when pathogens enter your body and your immune system starts taking notice of it. This isn't really possible, but if a single particle of COVID got into your nose and got inhaled into your lungs, your immune system would not start reacting yet, even if you had an immunity in place, because one particle isn't enough to do anything yet. But what makes infectious diseases infectious is that once they are in a host, they start replicating. This is the stage where most tests for an infection would not show a positive yet, even though the pathogen did enter your body. There isn't enough viral load. This is why many different diseases, not just COVID, have a delay before they start showing a positive result, even though the virus is definitely there. One kind of nice thing about the incubation stage is that through the beginning of this, you are not yet contagious. Stage 2 is prodromal. Before I started studying infectious diseases, I didn't know about this stage. But this is a very pivotal stage because at this point, the virus is replicated enough inside the host that the immune system is starting to pay attention and the host becomes contagious. This doesn't mean the virus has stopped replicating. That keeps on going. In this stage, a test can show a positive result depending on viral load, how much of the pathogen is there in your system. By immune system paying attention, I mean a couple of possibilities. If you're not vaccinated and you've never had this disease, this is when your immune system is going to start scouting to see what's going on because it has no idea. At this point, you might just feel a little bit tired as your immune system sends white blood cells to check out what's happening with the infection. If you are vaccinated or recently had a very similar infection, your immune system has effectively a bad customer sign up on the wall so that it can recognize what's happening and it knows how to respond to it. In that case, it sends very specific antibodies to the infection to eliminate the virus. You would still feel tired because your body needs energy to fight off an infection. At this stage of your infection, a doctor might say that you're exhibiting non-specific symptoms here. Because everybody's immune systems are different, it is possible that a person could get infected with COVID for the very first time, and their immune system would luck out and generate the correct antibodies very quickly so that the illness is eliminated without really noticing any symptoms. That's a possibility with every disease to a degree, but it's very unlikely with COVID because COVID is very good at avoiding immune system response. If you have vaccinated or acquired immunity from this virus, your immune system's response should be fast enough that not only could the infection stop at this stage, it could also stamp out the virus replicating early enough that there's no realistic chance for it to mutate. The fewer the pathogens that got into your body, the easier it will be for your immune system to counter them. And although this is the first contagious stage, if you are immunized, your immune response may also be fast enough to keep you from developing enough replicated virus in your lungs, mouth, and nose that you don't spread it very much. In fact, if your immune system responds well enough, you could never get a positive result on an at-home test, even if you were infected. When people say that you could be infected with COVID while not showing any symptoms, this is the stage, the prodromal stage that they're talking about. The point of vaccinations is to prevent an infection from getting past the prodromal stage and to tremendously reduce the amount that it replicates inside you so that the virus doesn't mutate and doesn't spread from you. So if someone ever says that vaccines don't prevent infection, well, that's technically true, but it's missing the point. Vaccines prevent illness and reduce the chance of a strain mutating inside the host. If you're immunized strongly enough, this could be where your COVID infection ends. But if you're not, we would get to stage 3, illness. You get to this point when the virus has replicated so much that a couple things happen. On the virus side, it has now replicated enough manpower to attack different parts of your body. Your lungs, your circulatory system, your nervous system, your gastrointestinal tract, and your brain. On the immune system side, that has sounded a red alert and started trying all the different methods to stamp out infection. Fever, coughing, sneezing, nausea, exhaustion, sore body parts, etc. Doctors would say you are exhibiting symptoms specific to this virus here. Your immune system is also trying to create antibodies that will counter the virus. It's good at making antibodies, but you can still think of it as kind of a trial and error process inside you until it makes ones that work. The difference between the prodromal stage and the illness stage is that this is when your immune system is overwhelmed by the infection. If it were not overwhelmed, you would not show these symptoms. If it were not overwhelmed, the virus couldn't mutate and couldn't attack the systems of your body. If you've gotten immunity from vaccination or prior similar infection, you often won't get to this stage. But if you do, there are a couple possibilities. Either your immunization has weakened over time. You can think of this as the bad customer sign on the wall having faded enough that your immune system isn't completely sure how to respond anymore, or the virus mutated enough that either your immune system doesn't recognize it as easily, or the antibodies it sends are no longer exactly the right counter. But they would usually be similar enough that the right ones will get created relatively quicker. If you've heard of people being vaccinated or catching COVID, and then just a month or two later they get sick again, it's probably because they encountered a mutated variant that's slightly different from what they had before. A careful laboratory analysis of your blood work might be able to tell you what variants you had, but an at-home test definitely would not. This is why even with good immunization, you should be masking around people. There's no way for you to know what variants they've been exposed to. When you hear doctors say that vaccines prevent severe illness, this is the stage they're talking about. Although I haven't found confirmation in any research papers yet, I strongly suspect that this is the stage where COVID attacks your systems enough to lay the groundwork for long COVID. Even though immune systems are really good at figuring out how to develop antibodies to eliminate infections, they don't fix the damage done from the infections. This is an unfair analogy, but think about chasing flies around your house with a hammer. You might kill all the flies, but you'll leave holes in your walls. The holes in your walls are going to be a problem too, unless you can find them all and patch them. But let's keep talking about infections. How do you get out of the illness stage? To be blunt, many people do not. If the virus continues to overwhelm the immune response, the virus eventually wins and the host dies. The reason why vaccine researchers are always delighted to be able to say that a vaccine prevents death and severe illness is because of this stage here. If anyone ever says that a vaccine prevents infection entirely, that's very suspicious. It is technically possible if the vaccine can live in the nose and mouth where most pathogens enter the body, but generally you need a barrier in order to prevent infection. However, a good vaccination can ensure that even if it takes a little time, your immune system does figure out what antibodies to send to counter the infection and stop being overwhelmed by the replicating virus. This is the stage where antivirals can be administered, like Tamiflu for influenza or Paxlovid for COVID. In the case of Paxlovid, there are two medicines in the dosing regimen. The first medicine has been found to prevent COVID in infected cells from being able to enter uninfected cells. It doesn't kill the virus, but it does stop it from being able to replicate. The second medicine is just there to make sure that the first medicine can stay in the body long enough to be effective. Otherwise, your liver could eliminate it before it could help. Once the virus is contained to only the cells that are already infected and can't get into any new ones, your immune system can catch up and send enough antibodies to eliminate the infection. Because there will stop being new virus activity in your body, your symptoms could diminish or go away entirely during the Paxlovid schedule. The process of wiping out the virus in the infected cells takes time, even with an antiviral keeping the virus from replicating. The Paxlovid dosage is usually just for 5 days, and if the viral load in your body was low enough that your immune system could wipe it all out in that time frame, then you will stop being infected. However, if your viral load was high enough, you may not be able to eliminate all of the virus during the time that Paxlovid is keeping it contained. Once the schedule of Paxlovid is over, any infected cells that are still there may be able to redevelop the ability to infect other cells. Hopefully, that will then be such a low viral load that your immune system can still stomp it out. But that does mean you may experience symptoms again after your Paxlovid doses are finished. Many people call this a rebound, but it just means that the antiviral didn't give your system enough time to wipe out everything. It does not mean a reinfection. It's still the same infection, unless you had another exposure, of course. It's just the leftovers of that infection. Once the viral load in your body starts to steadily decrease instead of increase, then you enter stage 4, decline. I suspect the reason that scientists identified this as a stage of infection was to indicate the direction that the health of the patient is going. This is finally the point where a patient is getting better instead of getting worse. But frankly, the host is still ill during this stage. They will keep showing symptoms, just less and less severely. They are still contagious, just less and less. And the virus is still replicating and mutating in this stage, just less and less. What an antiviral prescription tries to do is get you immediately from the illness stage to this decline stage, rather than making you wait for your immune system to do it on its own. Bacterial infection treatments can be somewhat broad, like getting penicillin. That will wipe out all sorts of bacterial infections. But viral treatments have to address the specific virus, or it won't be as effective. If you get Paxlovid for COVID or Tamiflu for influenza, and some symptoms decline, but others stay high or increase, then your doctor can investigate what else is going on. But effectively, this is the last active stage of the infection. As your viral load and symptoms decrease and ideally go away entirely, you begin to enter stage 5, convalescence. While there are other characteristics to this stage, the most important one, I think, is that your viral load is now so low and the replication so nullified that you can no longer transmit the virus to anyone else. There should be no symptoms of the infection at this stage, although it's possible that some long COVID symptoms may start to develop already. At this point, your body is technically free of that virus, but from all the work that your immune system did, it is weaker than usual, and you might feel more fatigued than usual in general. That does not mean that you're still sick. It means that you're exhausted, and you should rest up until you're not. I don't want to misspeak here, so let me go to my notes. Long COVID. Permanent damage after viral infection is not unique to COVID. For decades, doctors have known that a respiratory infection, even after cured, can leave permanent damage to parts of the lungs. The same is true for dermal infections and certainly true for neurological infections. COVID is insidious and somewhat unique in that it goes everywhere in the body and can leave lasting damage in places where it's hard to spot and hard to heal. It is so complex and widespread in its effects that some researchers, here at the end of 2024, think that every COVID infection could lead to long COVID to some degree, and certainly all the ones that include severe illness. We have to remember that this is still a pretty new virus. It could be another decade or longer before research points us to how it really affects us, let alone how to fully recover from it. The only ways to make sure that you absolutely do not get long COVID is not to get COVID. That means using barriers to keep the virus pathogens from going into your body at all. That means staying in the outdoors and circulating air and avoiding crowds. That means wearing a KN95 or better mask over your mouth and nose when you're around people whose infection status you don't know. There is currently debate as to whether being vaccinated lessens the chance of long COVID after infection. My opinion, siding with one group of researchers, is that the seeds of long COVID get planted during that illness stage, the third stage, and that the more severe that stage is, the more seeds are planted. A good immunization, at the very least, lessens that. Not having immunization would not lessen that. But again, this is all still new. The last thing I will touch on in this video is that anti-masking and anti-vaccination theories have been circulating since the early 1900s, and they're almost always wrong. There are some people with specific disabilities who cannot mask, but most people are completely able to mask, which is why medical masking and construction masking have been standardized for decades around the world. Some marginalized groups of people have historically been abused by government programs disguised as vaccines. But if it's the same vaccine that, for example, middle-class white people are getting, it's probably fine. There are tiny possibilities of allergic side effects to mRNA vaccines that aren't there with protein-based vaccines. If that worries you, get Novavax instead of Pfizer or Moderna. And there are hundreds of debunked myths about vaccines, from how they change your genetics to cause cancer or autoimmune disease. Those are all false. None of those things can happen from what a vaccine does to you. They could happen from prescription medicines designed to change your body chemistry, like birth control, and they can definitely happen from COVID, but not the vaccines. That's all anti-vax propaganda. So, should you mask when COVID infections are possible? Yes, whenever you're around other people. Should you also get the latest mRNA or protein-based COVID vaccine? Yes, every time there's a new formulation, as long as you don't have a medical condition that could be worsened by immune system activation. So, yes, and yes. Thanks for coming with me on this journey.